Welcome to the Post Sports Chat. I'm Drew Rubenstein here with Justin Jackson. And Justin, we're in between the WVU men's basketball teams. Lost to Gonzaga in Saturday's Capital Classic against Marshall. And after that 80-76 loss to Gonzaga on Tuesday night, Bob Huggins said his team is so close and yet so far away. What do you make of that statement, and would you agree with them?
Well, yeah, I think I would agree. I mean, there's certain aspects there that are true. And if you compare the two seasons this year to last year, look at this year first. They had Wisconsin on the ropes and had chances to win that game and just didn't quite pull it out. Tuesday night they had a 10-point lead against Gonzaga and obviously didn't hold on to it, and Gonzaga came back and won. But they were competitive in probably their two biggest games of the year. They weren't competitive in their games at all last year against ranked teams. There were some exceptions, the home game against Kansas, the home game against Kansas State, but there were so many other games that they weren't in against ranked opponents last year. And the fact that West Virginia is playing more competitive against ranked teams, it shows that they have taken a step from last year, but they still haven't won, and that's probably where he's talking about this, still so far away, because it's a big hump to get over when, you're not getting blown out, but you're still not winning. So there's still another step to take, and then I think that's what Coach is talking about there.
I guess to go along that line of thinking at the very end, WVU still seems like a team that hasn't figured out how to win in the closing minutes, and it's maybe been a variety of things. Cold shooting at the end, is it a lack of inexperience? What is it that is you sometimes see it in some teams that just figure out ways to win. When WVU had a Deshaun Butler, just found ways to win, and this team, it seems like, is still finding ways to lose.
Well, it comes with experience, and the difference is when you're talking about getting over that hump, it's really kind of a lack of focus, and it kind of comes with the inexperience, I think, more so than immaturity. You look at that Gonzaga game on Tuesday. For 35 minutes they played so well, but then in the last 5 or 6 minutes, they forget who Gonzaga's best player is, and Kevin Pangos scores 11 points in the last 5 minutes, and that ultimately kind of is what got Gonzaga back in the game. The Wisconsin game, also kind of the same thing. They get it cut down to 4, and then Wisconsin's the better shooters are getting open, and those are the things that you just can't have happen. You bring up the Deshaun Butler era. Those things didn't happen because they didn't lose focus down the stretch of games, and that's probably what ultimately set that team apart from Huggins' other teams is they didn't lose focus. They didn't forget who the best players were in the other team, and they guarded them. And this team is not doing that yet, and certainly last year's team didn't do that either.
And I guess if you want to look at the offensive end, you mentioned how those opponents that WVU faced got the ball to their best scorers in those crucial situations. You look at the statistics for WVU, and that's not necessarily been the case. Tuesday night's game, Aaron Harris goes off in the first half and then becomes a non-factor for large portions of the second half. Is that going to take time is Aaron Harris that guy that they need to lean on in the closing minutes of the second half, and I guess to get him more situated in those in those late game situations? What's that going to entail?
I think they would like to get Aaron Harris more involved. The other thing is, too, is Juwan Staten started to step up in the second half. Terry Henderson started to make some plays in the second half. So when Aaron starts getting keyed on, other guys are starting to fill the role for putting points on the board. But Aaron needs to be a guy that they need him to step up, and whether they start setting screens for him or just start drawing up more plays for him. Drawing up plays is something that WVU doesn't like to do. They want to just run their motion offense and make reads off of that and continue to do that throughout the game instead of saying, okay, we're going to go out and run this play. They might have to start maybe doing that in certain situations and to get Harris more involved in the second half of tight games.
To look at the big picture, Saturday's game against the Capital Classic, that's always a hard-fought game between WVU and Marshall. But there's 3 non-conference games left. WVU sitting here at 6-4. You hate to throw around NCAA tournament this early in December, but how crucial are these last 3 non-conference games before WVU gets into the Big 12 season?
You have to win, and it starts with Marshall, and Marshall will be playing without one of their top players, Elijah Pittman, who's suspended indefinitely at the moment. But Marshall is a game that the team that always plays so well in this rivalry game. So you just don't know what happens there. Then you have Purdue coming up, and Purdue's 8-2 right now at the moment. They play Butler on Saturday. Purdue's kind of a team like West Virginia. The teams that they've beaten, their 8 wins have been against lower competition, and they have a bad loss to a Washington State team that they'd probably like to have back, sort of similar to West Virginia's loss against Virginia Tech. And then they have one quality loss. They lost to 10 to Oklahoma State in the Old Spice Classic. So Purdue really hasn't beaten a good team yet, and hasn't really, outside of Oklahoma State, really hasn't played a tough schedule. So if you win these 2 games, it kind of gets you back going in some positive momentum, and then you get into Big 12 play, and then you have to see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, you got to probably win these 2 games, at least get you back into a postseason discussion. But if you lose these 2, then I mean, it's all bets are off at that point.
I know Huggins likes to say he's not a psychologist, and we're not either,
Yeah.
but this type of team coming off of last season, you do have to wonder, I think, a little bit about their morale, and especially if they're not able to turn things around in these at Marshall, Purdue. If you go into Big 12 play and you're sitting at 500 or right around it, that's probably not a place they want to be.
Yeah, it's not where they want to be. And then obviously, I mean, you start off the Big 12 play with 2 road games, and this has not been a traditionally good road team. So I mean, it can go downhill quickly. And then, of course, the Big 12, I mean, you talk about Kansas twice, and Kansas State twice, and Baylor twice, and Oklahoma State twice. I mean, there's some really tough games coming up. So by no means is it getting any easier for West Virginia.
All right, Saturday's game should be fun. We'll be there, and please continue to check TheDPost.com for the latest on the Mountaineers. Thanks for watching today.